things have changed quite a lot for me, because I'm not one woman alone in the wild, obviously. I live with others here, and I have a partner, a long-term partner. I used to think about that a lot when I was younger. I was actually quite obsessed with the idea of it myself. And I suppose it's about, for me, the ability just to do whatever you want to do, you know, without anybody else interfering with you. The wilderness offers a space which is almost like a blank canvas without other humans in it telling you how to be. So you can be the human you want to be in the wild. And I think the idea of a woman being alone in the wild is a little bit more radical. And I suppose if you're attracted to the idea of wilderness, you're also attracted to the idea of being a bit wild. And so yeah, maybe it's a little bit more wild than a man being out in the wild. Women are supposed to be domesticated beings, and you choose not to take that path. It can be feel like quite a rebellious act. And I also think a lot of people these days are feeling quite oppressed by regimes and systems. So the attraction of being out in the wild, I think, it's like a big release. Like, at last I can do something of my own. Things changed for me. It took me a long time to get to the position where I wanted to have a life partner. I felt initially that a life partner would interfere with exactly what I wanted to do. It would stultify me in some way. I would lose friends. I would lose the ability to make my own decisions, and you know, everything would have to be shared, and decisions would have to be made with other people. So I was quite attracted to the idea of doing things on my own, and that lasted a long time. It was only in my 40s that I started rethinking that. And the reason for that rethinking was that at that point I started engaging really deeply with philosophies of difference. And these were philosophies that draw heavily, inspired really by people like Derrida, who I've spoken of before, Deleuze, and very importantly Henry Bergson, who preceded those two philosophers. The idea of a philosophy of difference is that difference isn't just something that distinguishes one thing from another thing. Difference is a fundamental aspect of things themselves. Difference is in things themselves. It's within being. So I started understanding difference in this way, not something that gets in the way, but it's something that enables you to be who you are. We are who we are because of how we engage with others, because of the choices we make around other people's interferences with us. Words don't just relate to things. Our concepts or our words only have meaning in relation to other words. So red, for example, has no meaning unless it's in relation to blue or green or yellow or something that is not red. So I started engaging with the idea that difference is actually really important in my life. And trying to be one person alone just doesn't make sense when you start understanding the world in that way. So what becomes important is bringing others into one's life that are different. And what better way to do that than by having a long-term partner where you can actually, you've got these differences in your life all the time, 24 hours a day. So the one woman living in the wild was for me a childish dream now when I look back on it. Now what's important to me is living with difference, living with others who are different from one. I also live with other beings who are each individuals in their own right. Each of them has their own personality, their own way of being. They affect each other in different ways. Every goat, sheep, dog, cat, chicken. These are people, in a sense. You know, they are persons with personalities, and how I engage with these persons is really important to me. Engage with others in a way that doesn't reduce them to objects. And, you know, I find my engagement with my partner it can be challenging, because if I feel that I'm right, I want things to be done that way. Yet there are other ways of thinking about it. How do you negotiate those differences? It's a challenge, and it's an important challenge, I think, to engage with, which is why I'm here, I think. I love engaging with these issues. I read somewhere that human beings are not the kind of animals that are well suited to knowing about world affairs. You know, they're more suited to knowing what's going on immediately around themselves. And so we put ourselves in a really difficult place when we try to understand what's going on in the whole world. It's distant from us, and it's alarming, and it makes you feel filled with despair. And I wake up in the morning often filled with despair, but my head is also filled with things, and I go online and I read about wars that are taking place, and it fills me with despair. And then to try to sit outside and listen to the birds and calm down and become a bit more silent. And once that can take place, then there's more space for creativity. Then you can become creative. And maybe the creativity for me is very, very related to silence, but my creativity in the past has been related to words, to making words do things that they haven't done before. And that was a massive creative effort, to articulate words in ways that hadn't been articulated, to articulate concepts in different ways, to open new spaces of thinking and being. So creativity has so many different ways forward, but I found that kind of creativity with concepts was completely exhausting after a period of time, and I couldn't manage to sustain it. So I moved away from it, to try and open different spaces of creativity. And yeah, moving here for a while, I didn't know what I would do. Just being on the land was a creative move for me. What kind of a garden can I create around myself? What kind of environment can I create together with whatever's here? And it was only slowly that I got into painting and being creative in different ways. Creative practice. We all are creative, and sometimes we forget that we are. So to re-engage with our creative practice enables us to feel our aliveness again, even when we feel despair. Any creative practice, any overt creative practice. I mean, there's tons of creative practices going on behind the scenes all the time, but when we don't notice how creative we're being. But if we have an overt creative practice, like let's make a painting, or do a dance, or make music, or, you know, we're going to create a drama here which articulates the despair that I'm feeling. All of these things are very purposeful creative practices which give us a release from just plain despair when we feel it, or plain numbness. If we're not in despair, sometimes we're feeling numb, or so complacently comfy that we're still feeling dead. And creative practice just will stir us up. It stirs us up. And that's what's important, is to be stirred up in whatever way. There's a picture of Pete there. So when I was first starting off with painting, I found abstract work really difficult. I'd never done it before. And to paint without a concept, a thing, was challenging to me, but it's the space I wanted to move into, to let things go and to paint in a more fluid context. And it's been hard work. And the hardest work is letting the thoughts, making the silence in my head. And once the silence is there, and once that hard work is done, the painting just does itself, you know. But I am making art with others because engaging with others is to push me just a little bit further. How does it work when you have got another person who's been going deeply into themselves and wants to do something on a canvas? You might not have the same intention for it, and they make a mark on the canvas which might be jarring to you, or I don't know. So I've been exploring this possibility of making art together with others, painting with others, just to see where it goes, to see how it feels. So it's an exploration, an experiment. Yeah, it's an interesting way forward for me. I don't know where it will go, but I used to like writing with others, and I wrote in particular with one other author a lot. We got very used to writing together, and we would bounce ideas off each other, and the paper would always be so much deeper and more nuanced than it would have been if I had written it alone. So I loved that process. It brought different tonalities into the paper. So we'll see where this art making with others goes. It could be an interesting way forward for me. I think in sort of Euro-Western contexts, people are very much of the opinion that we can choose the kinds of communities that we live in, the kinds of people that we collect around us. And I think it's a mistake, because when we try to eradicate difference in this way, we, in effect, creating human monocultures. And we know from farming, they're fragile. They might be very good at producing a result. They might be really easy to manage. But in the end, a monoculture is a very fragile system. It needs to be looked after, it needs to be fed, it needs to be watered, they get diseases. Once you withdraw all the support and the medication and the constant care, the monoculture can't survive. If you think of a natural ecosystem which is incredibly diverse and very robust and really stable, and the more diverse it is, the more robust and stable it is, and healthy. And even if you start with a very sparse natural ecosystem, that ecosystem eventually complexifies itself and tends towards increasing complexity and increasing diversity and increasing health and robustness. So why would we want to create human monocultures when we already know this about natural systems? So I think eradicating difference, eradicating disagreement is a mistake. I would like to see people engaging with difference, engaging with disagreement, treating disagreement and difference as normal. And that doesn't mean we have to agree with everything. You know, we pretend we agree with everything. If we disagree, it's important that we disagree. But then what happens after the disagreement? Do we just walk away from it and ignore that situation, or do we sit with it in disagreement and anxiety? And I think it's neither of those things. I think we need to, when a disagreement takes place, it requires a creative response. In the face of disagreement, what can happen is that people work creatively to find a different way forward. And we don't know what that will be, but it really pushes us to seek more creative ways forward. There's a word that a colleague of mine, Brent Davis, used called enabling constraints. And these are constraints that, or limitations that, when you come up against a limitation, it pushes you to find more creative ways forward, and it enables you to enter a space that you weren't in before, something completely different. And I think it's a very powerful concept. Because everything in life, we are constrained in various ways in absolutely everything we do in life. And if we try to push those constraints away, there's nothing to help us move into different spaces. We just will experience the same reality again and again and again. The constraints push us into new spaces of possibility. Mystery is the incomplete, the unfinished journey, the opening that is ahead of us that we don't really know, in the mists even. When you know everything about a thing, and this I found also was the case with teaching and being taught. If somebody ties up all the loose ends for you or for someone else, there's no happiness involved. There's no pleasure. The pleasure is in the non-tied up bits. The pleasure is in the possibility of doing something creative, in the little openings that are left. And so those are the mysteries, is what is in those openings that we don't know. And that makes us feel alive, I think. The mystery and possibilities. I'm exploring a different kind of world now. The silent world and the world of shapes and marks and colour. I'm becoming very fond of it. And I'm practicing it more. And I suppose the more you practice a thing, the better you become at it. So maybe I'm becoming more and more silent. I'll get better with practice.